All right. Hello, class. So I want to give you all got a couple of lectures now that we're moving into phase two of the project. So the idea here is that we're going to move from getting that first round, kind of your first pass at things, which I know is can be a little bumpy, but I find that it's way easier to practice doing it by doing it. And so even though it was a little bumpy, I want to let you know that we're going to move forward, and I think all of you did a great job for where we're at, and now we're going to get a little bit more into the nuance of each of these areas. So if you want more practice at it, you're gonna get it. All right. So, a couple things I want to point out. Actually, no, I'll cover those in class tomorrow. All right, so there's two key things I want to cover today. The first is really about how you think about a discussion guide. Now, our discussion guides are going to be relatively simple, so this is something that I really want you to know in case you do work later on in the field, but you have to understand what is a good question. And that's going to be something that separates you from the folks who just kind of know, like, oh, yeah, user centered design, like it's about talking to people, right? Yes, and there's much more to it. All right, so let's dig in. So basically, the questions you ask, as we talked about, open-ended questions, huge, and I know a lot of you really took that in. I could see it from your responses and just that you were really grappling with it. So that was super. The discussion guide is something that you would use if you're going out into the field in a more of a professional setting. You'll obviously use it here, but it becomes critical in a professional setting. And so I'm going to share with you some content that my wife developed because this is her area of expertise. She's really deep into the aspect of ethnography, that part of human-centered design. So the discussion guide, and some people say like, well, can I just like go in and chat with people? And the problem with that is it puts you on the spot, and so it basically a lot of times you will miss out on key content if you don't do a discussion guide. So even a quick interview she has done in the past 10 or 15-minute intercepts where they're kind of like talking to people in grocery stores who haven't signed up to talk with them, and they often have like a 4-page discussion guide that's gone through many revisions. And the reason for that is if people are paying a lot of money to have you interview and understand what people need, they're going to have quite a bit of say about what they want that to cover. And so your part of your job in working with clients would be to really figure out which questions are going to be effective, really design the questions and figure out how to make a discussion guide really reflect the kinds of research questions that you have. So here, one of the things is it does help you navigate the ambiguity, right? This is an open-ended area, right? And so you can't tell them that you're going to find out exactly, like hard quantitative data about some predetermined solution. What you're going to do is you're going to understand more about how they think and feel, and that's highly ambiguous, but the discussion guide kind of helps you get there. The other thing it does is it kind of aligns you and your client. So rather than just being like, hey man, trust me, what the discussion guide will do is help them understand what types of things you're looking for. And if folks, in some cases where there's a focus group or something like that, then the discussion guide can actually be something that they can kind of use to follow along and get a sense of where you're at. And then the final piece is it can often serve as like an outline for your final report in certain cases. All right, so that's generally what a discussion guide is. For you all, it's going to be far simpler. We're just going to have a couple of questions, but they're going to be really good questions, which are then going to help you get a good interview. All right, so in terms of interviewing, we talked about this a little bit, but I'm going to get more into the nitty-gritty of it. So one, take time to just get to know them, right? It's easy to think like, I'll just kind of like rush into my questions, and it can feel really awkward, and you're going to get less valuable data. So introduce yourself, explain roughly what you're doing. Don't give them too much detail, but you want to make sure that you're, giving them a sense of, what, whether or not you're talking about better ways to walk down the street, or kind of a new you know seat belt for a rocket ship, right? Those are very different things. So you want to just frame roughly the challenge. So in this case, yeah, we're looking at finding ways to support parents during shelter at home, right? That's as much as you need to give them. If you are going to record, this is where you need to ask and make sure that you have permission for that. Setting ground rules, you cannot stress enough, like, hey, there's no wrong answers. We're just looking for your opinions, right? That's super useful. And then like making them comfortable, right? In your case, you'll be on Zoom, so they should already have that. But if you're out and about, you might want to say, hey, do you want to sit down? If they're in the sun, maybe move to the shade. So you just want to be open. A relaxed respondent is going to give you better data. Okay. All right. So before you do the interview process, what you're going to do is create your discussion guide, right? Like, again, this will be quite brief for you all, but then decide on who's going to be the primary interviewer. This came up there. I had a question just about whether or not all of you would be doing the interviews. Yes, you'll all be on the interviews unless you have extenuating scheduling conflicts. You'll all be on the interviewers, but it helps to have a primary interview. That would be the main person asking the questions. And then somebody else would be the kind of secondary person that would jump in with questions at predetermined times. And you want to work that out as a team. Otherwise, you're going to look like you all have no cohesion, and it's going to be confusing and off-putting for the interviewer or interviewee. Okay, so then during the interview, right, just capture everything you see, right? Not just what they say, but like, how are they saying it? Are there kind of strange things happening, right? And really do as much as possible. Many times you all won't be photographing, but so that's where the note taking is going to be important. If you feel at all uncertain about photographing, then I would say no, or don't worry about it. You may ask by the end of the interview where they feel comfortable with you. You'd be like, hey, can we take a screen grab of you or something like that? That can be nice. But don't feel pressure to interview. The only time I like, well, actually, generally, when I'm paying people, then I ask, then part of their payment is that I say like, hey, we need to be able to interview you. But if in recording, or I'm sorry, we need to record you. Recording is essential if I'm on my own, because it's impossible to take notes and do the full interview. So since you all are in threesomes, that should work out. Okay. Then after, yeah, you want to be kind of making sure that you're being fully present with them during the interview. And then afterwards, like quickly as a team, schedule time afterwards to think about, like, hey, what did we just hear? And cover like that in real time, capture some key themes, what stood out to you, just as a quick refresher so that you can kind of externalize what you heard as fast as possible. Okay, and then recruiting, we've done this. I want to share this with you just because this might be useful as you all go into your careers, but there's different ways. There's kind of network. So that's what I did. I tapped into people I know to see if they would talk to you. There, you can see some of the pros and cons to it. Also, I'll put this slideshow up. Stakeholder connections, that could be the kind of thing where maybe someone in, a parent-teacher organization, or, someone who has connections to a daycare. That could be like a stakeholder if we had an actual client. I've used that when we've worked with the city of Davis. We've asked them, hey, do you know anybody who might want to talk to the students? And they, yes, someone from facilities, etc. Snowballing is where you ask participants if they know people, and that's great. But again, you can see the pros and cons. You don't get as diverse a range. Intercepts are great. It's highly flexible, right? But it's it's just a lot of people say no because they're not planning on it. And then in professional settings, I use what's called recruitment houses. That's where you're saying like, okay, I'd love to talk to people who are 18 to 24 who have overdrafted a bank account in the last 6 months. That's an actual demographic we used when I was doing stuff at Capital One. So that's just kind of a quick run through of like some of the deeper parts of doing the ethnographic interviews, the main thing I want you all to take away from this is just know your discussion guide well. It can be very simple, but you really need to know it so that when you're in the interview, you're not kind of futzing with it. You feel confident that you know the questions you have. And you don't need to get through every question, but you need to address each theme that you're looking to explore. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you all around some of the nuts and bolts and getting a little deeper into ethnography. We'll talk more about it in class on Monday.